and stop translation. Yeah, transcriptions has stopped. So, okay, let's try this. So, do you see the full screen presentation or not? Could you please tell me? Okay. I can't hear you guys. So, I don't know why. No, still not. So, can you hear me? Can you hear me well? Yes, you can see my screen. Okay. Okay, so and what about the presentation? Because I try to share it in a full screen, and I don't have functionality to check your messages in the Teams. That's why, could you please tell me, do you see the presentation in a full screen or just like in the application for editing the presentation? Okay, I can't hear you and sorry, could you repeat, please?
I did it in application.
Okay. Okay, I will start in this way. Admit someone. Okay, now it just a bit better. Okay. So today we will talk a little bit about functions. There's a lot of information, so we will go through all of this, but please text me in Teams if you will have any questions about the functions, about the theory, because you will need to take a look to this theory by yourself again. Maybe you will need to repeat the examples from this presentation, and you will definitely understand how it works a bit better. But I think you also, it will be nice if you will search some additional information about the functions too, with more examples. So let's get started to the definition. The function is a block of code. Functions are the main building blocks of the program. They allow the code to be called many times without repetition. Functions should do only one function. And in ECMAScript, functions are the first class objects. In some ECMAScript after 2016, we had the classes, but this is the very first class object. So this term means that function might be passed as argument to other functions, and also inside this function you may create sub-functions which can help you to create more functionalities for other objects. So NGS functions can accept arguments, return a value, or simply skip any of them. So in the how to define the function? Once again. Yeah, the keyword function, then you should provide a name of this function. You might set some parameters to the function or might not, it depends on the situation. Then this is a body of the function. Sometimes we might return something, and about the brackets, please don't forget. So function features. Function is an object, but also it could be invoked. For example, invoked like this. Function can have a name or be anonymous. Sometimes it's happened too. This example, like anonymous function. Function always has a body, and function object has some predefined properties and methods. We will discuss it a bit later also in more details. So function is an object, and what does it mean? We can save function to variable. We can pass it as a parameters to another function, and we can return it from another function. So sometimes we might use a function as an expressions. Sometimes we can pass another function as a parameters, and it's called usually like callback function. And yeah, a return another function, it's usually we will take a look such variants as a closures, or for example in recursion methods, and we will talk about it a bit later. So function scope basics. Scope is a hidden object, which has no direct access. Scope is a storage for all declarated variables and functions. Function scope is created on each function call, and function parameters become scope variables. Global context for functions. So there is a global context which we maybe discussed in previous, as I remember, lesson. Our code, it means that our code executed inside a global functions, which is called no, not like this. I'm talking about global scope, which is outside the function. And for example, inside the function, we also have a scope. And for example, for the scope of this function, we have the same as this scope, and it's the window. For global function, this scope, this is a window, but for the function inside this, for the function and inside her scope, we also can call this, but it was just a little bit different scope. So question is a process of how variable appear in the function scope. Let var and const declaration go first. Function programming goes second, and will override params. Function declaration goes third, and will override params and vars, but will be conflict with let and const. But setting value to var will override a function object. Here we have a bit more example. I really suggest you to do it by to repeat these examples locally in your machine and try to debug it. So here, for example, in the function try hosting, we see that the first JS find var var a here, which is here, and hosted declaration by its values isn't defined now. So then in second, function argument a is written to function scope as a parameters and string some text. This is like a parameters for the function, for the parameters a. Then what we will see? We will see that the function declaration goes sort and will override parameters and vars. So what does it mean? It means that here, so we are going through the script from top to bottom. And what does it mean? That inside of this try hosting function, we have this parameter first. Then when we try to call these parameters, we will see that a has some text values, and this is means that function scope A has a parameter some text, then will be created variable A, which is set 10 instead of some text, and inside now function scope A has number 10, and then we will see the correct value for the parameters A. For hope it might be just a little bit confusing from the first time, but you will see that it's normal behavior, and if you try to provide some additional parameters to the arguments to the functions, you will see that first of all they will be using these parameters, and then new values will be applied to these variables. So declaration, exception, and self-invocation. Declaration function is just like a simple variable in the current scope. Then function expression is a real variable, and self-invoked function is called only at the place it was called. So I'm just add a few comments about the self-invoked function. So what does it mean? It has a bit different syntaxes. You should take a look carefully with the brackets. For example, self-invoked function usually and always starts from the brackets, round brackets, from start till end, and then here we will see the parameters. In such variants, you can self-invoke the function, but if you forget the brackets, you definitely this self-invoked function will be just function without any names, and will never run. Then function declaration. So function declaration has a required name. In the source code position, it is positioned either at the program level or directly in the body of another function, which is called function body. Function is created on entering the context stage, influence variable object, and is declared in the following way. So once again, function keyword, then the name of the function, parameters, it might be empty, body of the function, here we usually put some code, and square brackets. Local variables. A variable declared inside a function is only visible inside the function. Actually, it means only about let and const. About var variables, it might be not like this, not exactly like this. So have a different example, but in general, you should know that all variables which was declared inside the function definitely you could see only inside the function. Outer variables, a function can access an outer variables as well. The function has full access to outer variables. And so once again, this is outer variables. And inside show message function, we can reassign some new values, or just if we text here console log .log and username, we will see John here. But because we reassign new value to this variable, we have another message here. So be careful with this, but yeah, remember that all variables which was declared outside the function and inside the function is available in this function. But for example, if we have the second function, which will be called show message, show message, and for example print message. In print message, we will see only username and this function will be after show message here, for example. So the print message function will see only his variables and outer variables, but the variable, the message, let message, you will not see. So function arguments, value we are passing on function invocation are called parameters or function arguments. When a function is called and new scope is created, it has predefined property arguments. And it's storage for all parameters which were passed on a function call. So in such way, you might collect all, for example, sometimes you don't know how many arguments will be in a function, and you might use arguments just to collect all variables, all arguments in one value and use them calling by index. Default function parameters. It was added not from the scratch in JavaScript. It's appeared in 2016, as I remember. So currently you can provide some default message to the function, and it allow you avoid some mistakes in a code. If, for example, in such cases, for example, sometimes some value might not be appear in the function as an argument, and then you will have some default value and continue to run your code. Returning a value, a function can return a value back into the calling code as a result. And the function returns value with return keyword. This here might be a value. I'm talking about some variables, maybe just string, number, and also it might be a function. So you may use return anywhere in a body, like in the second example. But if you return something, your next code after the return word will not be implemented, and the execution is stopped usually always. So return a function with an empty return or without returns are defined. If a function doesn't return a value in the same, it is the same as if we returns undefined. Usually such behavior not make sense, and sometimes you might meet with this. You might meet with such cases, but it will be just because you don't need something in a return, but it will be really, really rare. About naming function, because the function, this is an action, usually we prefer to call some function with a verb, starting with a verb. For example, we can get something. It means about data, getting data for the table, for example. Calculate something, calculate the variables, or calculate values for the tables. Create some objects. Usually this is a specific object. For example, we might create the name of the user, or check how it works, and so on, so on. Summary, let's summarize a little bit. Value passed to a function as parameter are copied to its local variable. A function may access our variables, outer variables, but it works only from inside out. The code outside of the function doesn't see its local variables. And once again, for let and const, it might be more strict mode. Function might return can return a value, not can, might return a value if it doesn't if it doesn't return some value, it will return undefined. About the function naming, we remember that function, this is just an action. So usually we name the function with verb and try to create such name with understanding what it will return, get, and so on. So also we have a function expression. So in the source code can only be defined as a expression position, can have an optional name. So basically we just provide some name. It called function expression, but we apply to some, we provide some variables, just a function as expression, and with usually this function starts from function without name, brackets, you may add parameters or not, then you have a body of this function, and that's all. And then you call these full variables like just usual function. So about named function expression, we usually name it shortly. It's not a good idea if you name the function expression the same name of function values. So it will be different. First, it should be different, but because function usually and function expression, this is two different objects, so the naming of the expression function doesn't make any sense, and it will not work. So you should remember this. Callback functions. I've mentioned it a bit earlier. Callback function is a function that is to be executed after another function has finished executing. Function can take functions as arguments and can be returned by other functions. Any function that is passed as an argument is called a callback function. So let's take a look at this example. This is an example of callback function. We usually use this word callback when we declare something, and then just using you might so in this full function we should provide an argument as a function. Here should be function. So we see here such examples like full and providing as an argument function bar, but sometimes this is very rare situation. Be honest, I almost don't see any such examples of syntaxes. Usually we call full function with bar function, and bar function should be defined just a bit in upper position. So but anyway, such declaration is not correct, and you know, if you text in some code, and when you will be more familiar with JavaScript code, you will know that we have some linters, it's called, and such syntax is not a good examples of writing the codes. Such function expressions, and differences between function expression and function declaration. Function declaration, this is a function which was declared as a separate statement in the main code flow, and usable in a whole script code block. So, but the function expression usually created when the execution reaches it, and is usually from the on. And also function expression created instead an expression or inside another syntax construction. So let's discuss a bit arguments. But before this, maybe you have some questions.
Oh, I have a question that what is the main code flow?
What is the main code flow?
Yeah.
Okay. Give me a second. So, for example, you have a script. Let me take a look at the maybe. So, for example, here we have two small examples. Should I try to? Can I? No. Like this, and maybe I can zoom it a bit. No, I can't. So, for example, here, just a function declaration example, right? Here we have calling this function and the function itself. But here we have the square as an example of a function expression, and it means that this block of code you can put in any big script. So, for example, you have a big script for 300 lines, and this is your main code. Let's say that this is your main code, and you might put this section in, in a position where you need this, or let's say any, if it's independent, more or less. But about this function, in general, yes, you might put this block of code in any position of this big script. But for example, if you use this square somewhere else, it's not like an empty variable which you just define and that's all. But if you use square somewhere, you can use this code only in a block where you using square variable. Does it clear? More clear?
It means that declaration is like a separate part and I can use anywhere, and it doesn't, it needs some context to use, right?
Yeah, more or less, yes, so if I understand you correctly.
Yeah.
So yeah, once again, if you use square variables and it was defined and you use the square variables in the end of the script, usually you define these variables before your script. But function square you might use few times. You might declare it anywhere, especially if it's an independent function. Yeah, so main script code flow, it means that if you have it's here was talking just about the big content of script and not about the function block scope. For example, here you cannot see this function. I'm talking about function expression, this block outside some function. Does it make sense?
Yeah, I understand now.
Yeah, good. So about arguments. Yeah, we've talked a little bit about arguments object. So once again, arguments, this is some, how to say, this is a special arguments which you can use in order to simplify for yourself all. For example, here just 3 arguments, but sometimes it might be too much, maybe hundreds. It's possible, why not? So, and arguments you can use easily in such to simplify for you, and you just set here index by a variable. For example, you might define a counter and arguments and call inside of square brackets this counter, something like this. Default parameters, once again, this is a new option, not super new. No, it wasn't defined in 2019. It was defined in 2016, as I remember. But yeah, it's a good option to define the variable in a arguments position, in parameters position. But and if it might allow you avoid some mistakes. So when you undefined it, you set undefined it. Usually it will. So if here is undefined, so you inside of the test function num will be 1. So that's a good practice. REST parameters. Let's just discuss these parameters more in more details. The REST parameter syntax allows a function to accept and identify a number of arguments as an array, provide a way to present periodic functions in JavaScript. In mathematics and in a computer programming, a periodic function is a function of okay, I just better to just try to explain you it by myself, because in examples it might be just a little bit better. So sometimes we have such parameters which, for example, might be once again, it might be a few parameters, or it might be not just few, maybe it might be 100 parameters, and you need to collect all of them into one variables, because this previous arguments, this is the old-fashioned how you might collect all these arguments. But in REST parameters, you might collect them, and also you might work with them. Just for example, I will show you a little bit. Let me duplicate it, and I will copy this function. So like this. And for example, here, let's take a look with arguments. Like this, and so, and we will create another function, my function 2, and here variable. So like this. Okay. And what we need here, I will not add this reduce function, but here, yeah, better like this. So we will call this function with 1, 2, 3. No, it's incorrect. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7. Okay, and this is correct. I will show you just a bit later. 6, and right now A, B, C, and call them again 2. So let's do them like 10, 11, 12. And yes, that's enough. Let's run it again. Somewhere is a mistake. Okay, this. Okay, good line.
Maybe in the line 3 you misspell the argument. The A is E.
Yeah, you're correct. Yes. Yeah, like this. And so here, this is the first example. This is about my function 2. And here you see just an array. And why it's a big difference? Because you should call here, for example, this is an objects array, and you call them by 0. But, for example, yeah, 0 by index 1. You might call them by like this, A. And you could see 10, 11, 10 again, right? But you use these variables, and also you have in this, so if you use some default parameters, for example, and call it inside your function, and if you ask about other arguments in arguments variable, you will see all these variables again. But for example, here we haven't just array. First of all, it's just a bit two different objects, right? Here. And if you will open it in console log, as I remember, in the console itself, you will see that here there is an other parameters, as I remember. Let's go and take a look at this. Once again. Oh, yes, happen. Yeah, arguments. See, this is arguments, this is just array, two different objects. So here we have some additional options, and here we just have length. So this is definitely different object. And what one more interesting option with the rest parameters, this is because, for example, you can call A, comma, and what do you think? What you will see in other values? Okay, so if you don't have any ideas, it's not a big issue, because in other values, if you define some variables, you get just first value. For the first value, it will be as a parameters. For the rest parameters, it will be other values, and you will find them there without A. So once again, if you separate these parameters, for example, I might add B, C. Here in other values, it will be 5, 6, 7. But here it will be usually arguments. All collected arguments will be in object arguments. So different meanings. Okay. Default parameters, rest, spread. Spread syntax is more or less similar for spread, but not the same definitely. And it allows iterable such as an array expressions or string to be expanded in places where 0 or more arguments or elements are expected, or an object expressions to be expanded in place where 0 or more key value pairs are expected. So here in an example, we have just array and variable. We can try to combine them together and we will get the new array with all values. So here it might be not only numbers, you might put here a string, might be add here an array. If we combine two arrays together, we will see that it will be only one array. But for example, do you remember maybe? So do you remember maybe another options which can help you create new arrays with array parameters, with object parameters, something like this? Okay, so in a previous time, we didn't have such options. Against it was added in ECMAScript 2016, and here such methods might not work in some browsers, which is Internet Explorer. So be careful with these new options. I'm talking about spread, default parameters, REST, and so on. And about so here we have an example of combined two arrays. So just see that if we would like to add just a variable to an array without three dots, without spread operator, but if we would like to add two arrays into ones, we use spread operator. If it will be without spread operator, we will see here additional array. Okay. And okay, once again, we use instead spread operator. Usually it called assign, but it's for object assign. We had this option for an object, and this spread operator, for example, we might apply also for an object. The result will be definitely the same. We just have object one, and for example, we have, okay, here we have three objects, and using object assign, we will combine them into the one as a result. But the same we might do just because if we would like to combine them into one with a spread operator. I will show you like this, and like this. Here, once again, yes, once again, here, this is the result of new object, which has a collection of all separate objects, right? And they are listed by comma. So and anyway, object which was O1 still the same. It didn't change. And about arrays, yeah, now usually we just text 1, 2, 3 array 1, comma 1, 2, 3 array A2. It's simple, right? But how we worked with it earlier, to be honest, I need to remember this. I will let you know, because just right now it's live out from my mind. So, and I will continue then. But I mark it and will text you. So new function, we have such option as a new function, like you could see it here. It means that creates a new function. It will create a new function object, calling the constructor directly, can create functions dynamically, but suffers from security and similar performance issues to global object. However, unlike EWL, the function constructor creates functions that execute in a global scope only. Functions create the function constructor do not create closure to their creation context. They always are created in a global scope. So when we run in them, they will only be able to access their own local variables and global ones, not the ones from the scope in which the function constructor was created. This is different from using global object with code for functions expressions. So I saw it somewhere here, but okay. Here we have a function and we create new function x, and this x refers to global x. This x, it means. So, and when we will call such example, for example, create function 1, we call it and we will see that x, this is 10. But in the second example, create function second, we have a function which is created without any new without new function, and this in the scope of x will be local scope. So, and we will see 20 here. Let's talk about closure, and I think and I hope that you will run this example by yourself, and maybe all these examples in this section you will run by yourself, debug them, and try to understand how it works more deeply, because not usually we can understand it from the first run. The lexical environment object consists of two parts: environment record, an object that has all local variables as its properties, and some other information like the values of this. A reference to the outer lexical environment, usually the one associated with the code lexically right outside of it, outside of the current figure brackets. Closure, usually, what about the closure? Usually a function remember where it was born in special property environment. It refers the lexical environment from where it's created. But when a function is created using new function, its environment refers not to the current lexical environment, but inside of the global one, so which we discussed in this example, right? So if we use, for example, new function, it refers to the global scope. If we use just function with return keyword or not, it refers to local scope. So, and let's just discuss what about time? We spent almost 1 hour. Well, and let's discuss just a bit new information for you. Yeah, about recursions. And after this section, we will repeat something a bit scope once again. Recursion is a programming pattern that is useful is in situation when a task can be naturally split into several tasks of the same kind, but simpler. When a function solves a task, in a progress, it can call many other functions. Recursion algorithm might be just, you know, recursion algorithm call the function itself once again. It might be few times, might be not, depends on the condition. It can be using for parsing tree walking. It's usually tree walking. It means that if you have some data, big data, and usually beta creates some kind of tree, and you need to go once again into the same parameters in this tree, it will be useful. So one thinks which is call stack isn't endless, and any recursion can be changed to loop. Here in this example, we have function which is called pop from storage, and here, who remember what pop is doing? So hope you can hear me. Still can hear me. Can you remember the pop option for an array?
Pop will remove the last item and return its values.
Yeah, you're correct. So so here we, for example, have in this example we need, sorry, once again for the full screen. So in this example, they would like to remove all items one by one, all values from the array one by one, in order to create empty storage, right? To clean the storage. So, and here just a small algorithm when they are checking the storage length. If it's not, then it's once again, as a parameter, we have a storage here. So useful storage, this is array. So in this function, we get one last. We remove last parameters and return them. Where? And not return. We just console. We are sending these parameters into the console. So then checking. We are checking if the storage empty, then we text storage is empty. If not, we will call this function once again, and this option is calling a recursion. So once again, here more popular, more famous example of recursion when we try to power some number. For example, we have 2 in power 3, it will be 8, right? And here just an example of the example how to implement this code. So if we have a din, then we just return in 1. If it's not a 1, if we have 1, we return 1. Because 1 in any other powers, it always will be 1, right? But if this is not a 1, we just doing this function few times. So here the example 2 in power 3. And the recursion here in this place, when we call in x all the time with an decreasing all the time number of the power. So arrow functions. Arrow functions functions expression has a started syntaxes that is function expression and doesn't have its own on these arguments super and u target. This is more or less newest feature in JavaScript. It appeared in the same time when we had let const. Has just a little bit, not different, just easiest syntaxes, but also has a differences between his scope arguments and super or new target. You could see here a new examples, just examples how it looks. And once again, I've just changed an order of the arrows function, but okay. Actually, we have here examples how it should looks usually. This is, this is not the full example, because here before the brackets you should have a name of the function. But if we compare just the ordinary function with the arrow function, you will see that the syntax is easier to read. And let's compare it just like this. For example, this is how we usually call the function. That function, my function, arguments, and the body of the function, right? And for example, return 0 here. And if we call this function, we will see that 0, right? But when we would like to use an arrow function, we better to use, especially without any objects, expression, new function, and for example, such syntaxes, you might do the same. And console. The result will be the same, but the lexical environment and this will be different. This, I'm talking about the special word this, okay? Continue. About the syntaxes, it might be, you might use in the brackets, and statements will be in the square brackets. But for example, if you have some expressions here, just use without square brackets it. And the same with about according to the parameters, few parameters. For example, if we have a list of parameters, we must cover it in brackets. But if we have only one single parameters, we might not do this. But sometimes some linters remind us that we need to cover it as in brackets. So they might be empty brackets, and depending on the situation, is a statement or just a block of code, we can use a square brackets, or if it's just expression, just call it without any brackets. And here we have an example, small example about the brackets with the return expression. I will show you that sometimes, for example, like this, I texted in square brackets, but sometimes we might do such things, and so it will be okay too. So you see that it works. But this is only for, not for a small, not for a code or statements. I'm talking about few lines. This is if you have only one line, and in such variant, it means that this is the same as I text return 0 or return 1. So not about the block of code. So yeah, we've just discussed it. Multiline array functions. Once again, here we have few examples. Once again, just discuss it. For example, here just a statement, and it means the same as a return. We might also, this is okay about the syntaxes because one parameters and return only a. This is just simplifying of the function. And without parameters, oh sorry, it doesn't make sense. I'm talking about calling just array function without any parameters and statements. And once again, we've discussed in the previous topic about, for example, filter. Here we have an example how we call callback function in an old way, and we also can call as a arrow function. Just see how it looks more readable, let's say. But yeah, again, this will be different. I'm talking about this word, special word in JavaScript. Yeah, about this is almost the same what we discussed a bit earlier. Yeah. Yeah, and for example, if we would like to call the function without parameters, but the body will not return something, but it will be one line, you should cover it in square brackets. And here, this is about that there is no separate this. Better, I'd like to discuss this topic when we will take a look more closer with an object, because, for example, if we have some object, let car, create car, and we have a color, for example, red, and sound car, for example, will be function. And let's call this here car. And you will see that console. So here we have a big object, this, which contains everything. But color, it's not a good example because color. Let's add a price. Once again. Price here. Okay, and this call price. And result. Yeah, I left. Yes, okay, so this function should now work. Undefined sound car. I do something incorrect. So car sound and use this brackets. So now it's fine. And here, so we can call price car price. Yes. So see that we have inside this arrow function, we can call a cars method using the variables itself. But if we will change it to function, oh no, like for comparing, I will let you sound car2. And here we will call car this car price. Now it should be undefined. Yeah, because we don't have a comma. And once again, here only so cars sound. But if we would like to use this method, we will see the same. But in the first very options, we can't use this price. This is a big differences between of these functions. Once again, see undefined. So once again, we don't have any access to these methods in the arrow functions. We don't have any where was it? Recursion, arrow functions. Yeah, we don't have these arguments of the function and super new target. New target, this is in a event for events, some events. Okay, and
I have a question.
yes.
Can you come back to the example?
Which is in the browser here?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, like, can I call this dot sound car? Like, will this have the function sound car inside?
Are you talking about this method?
No, outside. Like, for example, I call it in the line 13, for example.
Are you talking this?
Yeah, so like I call it like a solo. This dot sound car, will it have?
Listen, not this is, you should understand that this should be what we will see in this if we will call it outside. For example, in this, we don't have this. Once again, it's some error. Yeah, this error. Moment. it should be like here. So here, this methods will create only a window. So we have this car in window. So it means that we will call this car. Let's see. No, we cannot call this. So depends once again. Moment. We will.
I think this is an object of car, so we should we shouldn't call this dot car, but like we should call this dot variable inside car or function. So I mean to ask that will the function sound car inside this?
So okay, just see. We can about with this this is just a little bit different. So if we would like to call car price outside the object car, yes, we can do, but after we declare this car. See, right here. This is like we call in these functions. I made this example because I would like to show you the differences between function which was declared with as an arrow function and just function without name, right? Just function expression. So here you have a different lexical environment. I'm talking about arrow function and function for sound car 2. And if we would like to call something outside the car, for example here, if we call car.price, it will be incorrect because there is no any car object. Okay, see. But after when we define the car, we can call car.price, and we cannot call this .car price because it's incorrect. Here we don't have any this.
How should we imagine this? Like what is this?
We will talk about it just a bit later, okay? Today, but just a bit later. And this .car.page, it will be correct only in this case if this block code will be inside some functions. Yeah, something like this. But function, my function, something like this, and after just creating more readable. So here there is no any car, and outside the function we don't know about car anything. Here we don't know nothing about car too because the car wasn't declared here, but here right now, see, we have a once again. Once again, here, oh no, like this. So, wasn't deleted. I know what's happening. My function, we need to call this function. Yeah, so here we have object and we call any methods inside the function. So again, we can call car.price. And now function has their own this environment, but we don't have here a car. Why? Because this is like global scope, local scope of the function. I will explain it to you a bit later, because sometimes it's difficult from scratch without any theory told you about it, right? Okay. So once again, let's continue, okay? About the array methods, we've discussed them in the previous lessons. Map, filter, sort for each, and reduce. They are working easily to help you to work easily with an array by itself, to going through all elements and to do something. Some of them return you only part of array which allows a condition. Some of them doing something with array as like sort or map, but return, for example, all array. Map will return you all array, but with applying some actions. For each, just going through all elements and not return. This method will not return you something. And no, we don't have it here. Okay, but you can do with each element something what you would like inside of this callback function. Okay, so and also we have some methods: find index, index of, which includes methods. They help you to define is a true statement, false, help you to find some index. Is this element having this array or not? Some of them return you true or false. Some of them will return you -1, 0, 1. So also, or just index. And about join, for example, you can join all elements of array in one string again. So push and shift and pop help you to work with an array with itself. So do you need to clarify some methods of them? Okay. So let's go a bit about setTimeOut. setTimeOut. Do you know what someone may be faced with setTimeOut and setInterval? Maybe someone can tell us a few words about this. Okay, I just show you this picture because this picture likes me just a bit more. For example, setInterval. In this example, we have two methods: setInterval and setTimeOut. For example, so in setTimeOut, let's take a look at the examples and just continue with other topics. So here, for example, so if we would like to, I'm just thinking about some examples in life. You need some reminder in your telephone that in your mobile phone that after 15 minutes you need to go to the bus station. So usually in such cases you will use setTimeOut function, for example here, and we will like this, and we will see that after 1 second, after 1 second, you will see this notification. So after 15 minutes, for example, you will see the notification that you need to go to the bus station. But setInterval do a bit different things. For example, setInterval will remind you about notifications that you need to go to the station each times when you, for example, when each time during the period which you set here. So this is the main differences here. And once again, here there is hope, because the quality of the picture not good in my at least screen. So here the example which you set, and the reminder each 2 seconds should appear alert with a tick message. So, and here after you set timeout with a delay for 5 seconds, and you told that you need to clear set interval after 5 seconds. So it means it will call 2 times, and you will die this set interval function after 5 seconds. You will see only 2 notifications. If you need to see this notification maybe a whole day, just put you just tell that here I need spend, I don't know how many milliseconds in a day here, but here usually milliseconds using value. You cannot use here day, only milliseconds. And after some period, a clear interval set interval function will be cleared using clear interval, and for set timeout, clear timeout method usually used. So here will be this. So global context this. In the global execution context outside of any function, this refers to the global object, whether in strict mode or not. For example, so if we don't have any methods or functions, if we call in global context, we don't have any syntax of function call, and value of this will be usually window. So if we call method object foo, value of this will be object. So it means if we create object with the method foo, we will see that this is the context of this object. The same was your question. Now let's take a look through all of this, and then we will back to the example. Okay. So so baseline function call foo and window or undefined. It's okay. It depends on where it was called. Foo call context, and my arguments, it's about context. This context we will just take a look a bit later. What is it? And constructor with new, for example, we'll create with new function. New function will be context. And it might be value of this with a parent context also too. So here, once again, do we have here an example? Yes. we have here okay, let's go to the example in the browser. So once again, here the context of this is the context of this function, or maybe undefined. But in our case, this is a function. I'm talking about function scope here. So how we can check it? Oh, I know. Should be car. Car, for example. No, we don't have it here. Okay, not like this. So, do you think, is it window the same or not? Usually, it should be inside function without any parameters. They are might be different or maybe not, but it depends on the global scope here. If we would like to call this or window outside the function, they should be different, have some differences between this my function. So how we can maybe like this. So client information here, because we have a window. Oh, I need to think how to show you the differences actually. No, not like this. You know, I cannot just right now show you the difference. Give me, please, small time to think about it, and I will show you and explain it once again, okay? About differences between this. Okay? And silence. Okay. So about, let's continue, and you know, with what? We will continue with a few, so one more things about this, that so the environment in which function is executed is called function execution context. It consists of function scope, function parent scope. This keyword often is called function context. Exact value of this is defined when the function is called. And in strict mode, if this wasn't defined by the execution context, it remains undefined. So the function for example, if we saying that function has a methods when a value of its property is a function, so we just easily can see that the context of the function's method is saved. In this example, the example which I tried to show you, So here, for example, current value 100, and here we might call the current value and see that the current value so print current value is an object, yes. It's okay, it's incorrect. Once again, with this, I will just clarify you a bit later. I try to find more appropriate word because difficult for me to tell you just right now. But once again, if we have an object, go into this. If we have some object, and then in this object we have two functions, not two functions, just function, we might call the price using this, but and it means that we have an access to all parameters into the car's object using this. But once again, in arrow function, we don't have such ability. So once again, arrow function don't have their own arguments object. So it means that we cannot use arguments in arrow function, but we can easily use it in a decorated function arguments. Call, apply, bind. Maybe someone of you meet with this function when we just call additional arguments, apply or bind. Okay, so call method calls a function with a given this value and arguments provided individually. So here we have that slice method will be called with arguments, and these arguments, right, like here, was applied, and as a result, if we join the function, so what is the main target of print args function? It means that no matter which array has by itself here, this context will be rewritten with arguments, and usually will be return the list of arguments which we will set for the print args function. About apply, apply method calls a function with a given this value and arguments provides as an array. So here this is this and this is an argument. So differences between call and apply. JavaScript apply function is used to borrow functions and to set this value. For apply function, arguments takes from an array. We can edit elements for apply functions. The elements can be further edited to another array. Built-in function, its method can use built-in function like min-max functions, and constructor can be used for chain constructor for an object. For example, for call JavaScript call functions, call function doesn't have this feature for constructor, the same features for constructor, and so we have apply one more methods of apply? No. So their main target is a bit differences. Some of them can give a different, provide a different apply methods call function with a given this value. So it means that you can set a different value of the scope, maybe I can say like this. But for call, it's not correct. They just provide you new arguments, that's all. So about bind function, methods create a new function that when called has this keyword set to the provided value with a given sequence of arguments preceding any provided when the new function is called. So here was an example in this screen. And let's take a look a bit closer. For example, for user, show first function. So if we bind the cars to the show first function, what we will see in show first function, we see that we need to text a name in the console log in the console. So what was in original method? We take a look that data has two names, John Smith and Alan Simons, and then in the first data option we get the Alan Simons, and in the console it will be like Alan Simons. But when we apply cars here, do not apply bind cars to the show first method, we will see that the data was rewritten and rewrite, and the data will be different, and we will see the result as Chevrolet Impala. So maybe if you need more examples, just let me know, and I will find and provide you in your chat for this lesson. Okay, and also I think that if we would talk about the function, just let me know, and we will maybe have some. Just text me that you need any help to clarify something additional, and I try to call with you or just have some messages, have a few messages to describe it more carefully. So once again, we have few topics about promises. Here we have a schema of how promises works. For example, if some of you work with promises. Guys, do you work with promises or not? Maybe someone tried to get some to do some examples. Okay, so what usually happen with the promises? Maybe you know what? Maybe I need still maybe 5, not 5. I need 20 minutes more. Maybe we can get a small break here for 5 minutes, because it's just a bit difficult to talk for me. Are you okay with a small break?
Yeah, it's okay.
Okay. Then 5 minutes, and maybe I need to timer. I will start it in 5 minutes. Okay. So, okay, I understand. But to be honest, in this presentation, just a few slides about the promises in asynchronous. So let's talk a bit about promises, and then try to to at least you will ask me a question, and if I cannot give you an example just right now, because for me, better to take a look at the promises with an examples. You try to digitalize, please, your questions. What do you don't understand, okay? And I try to help you. So about promises. Promises, this is an objects. They represent the eventual completion or a failure. Sometimes of an asynchronous operations and its resulting value. So, for example, in this scheme, you see that promise, usually we can say that it goes to some data. Then we've got some answer from the server, for example, or from a function. And this result might be fulfilled, then it's okay, and or rejected. And if we have successful results, we go to the so we have three status of status of promises. One of them is pending, when you go to the server, for example, and you are waiting the answer. And then after you get an answer, you have two other statuses, which is fulfill, meaning that the operation was completed successfully. Then you've got the data here. For usually we've got after the promise, this answer goes to then. You can work in this then with these results, and then this is async actions. It means that you're doing something with this then, and then I will show you just a bit in an example, but you can do something inside of this then. This then allow you to do something with the data. This is on fulfillment. This is a function, and inside this function, you should do something with this data. But and this is asynchronous actions. So about the rejected, it's another option, and rejected means that the operation failed, and you should do something with this error. You might show it on, for example, in the screen, or not. It depends on the requirements, but you should work with this error anyway. So then so what should I add here?
I have a comment.
Yes, please.
I have comment about asynchronous. So I understand. Like I have two actions, and well action one will wait. Action one will wait. Will wait like a set timeout 3 seconds, and action two, and when I wait action one set timeout, and I is action two keep doing, and it will done before action one. Yeah, I have a comment in this. Yeah.
Are you talking
Yeah.
about that, right?
Yeah. Is that right?
Is it about asynchronous or it's about setTimeOut? I think about asynchronous.
Yeah. Like a.
Okay.
Yeah.
Give me a second to think about it. The action 2 will end done action 1, or I'm not understand this part.
So in normal we must done action one. Yeah. So before before done action two, but in JavaScript action action one is set timeout to waiting, but action two keep doing. Yeah.
Yeah. So about this screen, let me. Okay, I will show you a moment right now. Okay. I will store this, and I will promise that I will send you a text about this. Okay. With the example, with detail, try to explain as much I can find, and try to provide you more details and examples. It will be easier. What about the promise? Give me a second, please. Oh. So. I think here there is an example about code. I will show you.
Yeah.
So, few words for those who don't know nothing about promise. So, just this schema you could find in MDN. Promise and give me a second. Once again, why it's usually in English? Oh, in Russian. So you could see you can see here this schema, and what is here's the main things that here we have a promise. It's pending. You know what? We can take a look at, in our console in development tools, we have a network section, which is usually we can check, and we can see the pending status, how to visualize us in this. Moment, memory. Where is it? Yeah, you see here the column status. 200, this means successful. 400, it means fail, right? And we have also 500 errors, server error, which is called, right? So I reload the page and see, no, there is no something bigger. What we can do, so here you sometimes might see a pending, it's called pending. So it means this process. Then we have two variants, fulfill, reject. You have asynchronous actions, and then after you one moment. How to say it in a few words? Just so this is a process of how what we'll do with your answer, right? And then returning data against pending promise. This is this is a process which you can't see by yourself in your client side. But when you have this cycle, you get some information and you can work with this information and then or catch methods. So usually we have this example. It will be super cool. What we will see here, we have a promise. That's how we can create new promise. Here, resolve, reject. This is a successful and unsuccessful answer. And here, this is just to show an example without any API, for example, but usually here we have some API. Here we have a request for some data. And then instead of this block, and it might be resolved or rejected. So here in this variant, we have resolve stage. So what means if we have delay or we don't have a delay, right? Why it will be, so in the second action done, second before done action one, why is happening? Because here, so give me just a small second. So I can explain you like this. We have almost the same function, my promise one, I call it, okay? And without any delay, just like this. And if you would like to see the differences, you can see. Give me a second, because we can't see in such way anything. So here should be result, and you will see this line. You should see this line as a result, and here the same. Okay, but you should see two different messages, and in delay in first, my promise will be 3 seconds. Okay, and here. This promise called my promise one. Okay. Run, full, and then full. Why it's happening? It's happening again because of this delay. No matter how, so even if here will be 10 promises and I call all of them 10 times, if they have some different delay, so it means that, for example, I will add the sort delay or sort promises. And here I set 2 seconds. Okay. I call them once again. And we will see first, then second, and then last. It wasn't obvious because, so let's call first, second, and this is third. Once again, first, second, and third. Why it's happening? Because of this delay. And if would like, for example, if we will talk about the real requests and getting promises from there. So wait 3 seconds here in this picture. This action finished earlier because we in this action there is no any additional actions. So here 3 seconds, here might be 5 seconds. Then in this if we would like, for example, add here 5 seconds in action 2 delay, then finish action 1 and then only action 2 after 2 seconds. Here we will wait 3 seconds and we will see action 1, and after 2 seconds, and this action finished, and then 2 seconds and we will see something which has happened here. Why it's happening? Because they are asynchronous. So what does it mean? It means that no matter what I will text here, I will I will just text it in some such way. It's incorrect, absolutely right, but here we have some code. Here should be some function. Oh, I might add them. So this code. Here should be some functions and some code which is work with some data which we get before these promises. Then we have a block of promises, and then we have some functions here again. So what does it mean? How it works, how faster it will work. So of course we can understand that the script runs from top to bottom. So first script see, I have a get counter function, then I need to this function returns some value, returns to the counter, and this counter do with this value something. So okay, I will see a few console logs here depending on the instructions. So it means 10, 11, but here console log 10 should be, where is it? Function, increment function counter. We will see in console log this phrase, increment function 10. Then once again, increment function will work and we will see 11. Then we will print it. And we will see that counter is equal 11. Then decrement function is, it was 11, then 10, and then print 10 again. So then we see the block with promises. They work with delay, but we definitely see first this. So do you understand? Do it make sense? Do you see how I explain in you? From top to bottom, and this code has no any timeouts or delay, so it runs immediately. Then read this, create my promises, and then we will see the result this, and we don't see few seconds this result and this result, but then while we waiting the promise to and promise without any numbers, we will see the messages in console log about the increment functions. This is how asynchronous works. Do you see? If it's not unclear,
I understand. Yeah.
or if it's not unclear, I can try to rephrase it or try to find more examples. But the promises, so if you have, for example, when you work with promises, you should remember always that it might not work immediately. It depends on how many times the server needs to respond or to get back your data which you asked. So if you asked, for example, you have an application with the tables, okay, with a timetable for a buses, for example. And of course, we can understand that and I'm talking about that we have the website with a timetable for buses. And this timetable should be, trying to find a word. Each time when you go to this page, you see correct and actual data. right? So you see that time is going out more and more. So it was, for example, 10:41, then 10:40, 10:39, and so on. And you see correct timetable for buses. So what, not timetable, schedule for buses. And you request this information, correct information about the buses from the server, right? So you ask this information using GET request. And you are waiting this answer from the server and then get this information. But this waiting might be depends from many things. For example, your computer is working not good today. Something happened. Maybe you have in your computer many applications, which launched applications, maybe 100, and that's why your computer works slowly. And that means that you got an answer from the server slower, more, not so faster, okay? So what for example, this is the first reason. The second reason might be because of the server overloaded, right? Has a lot of requests from other users. He might provide you an answer not so fast too. That's why, for example, today you've got a timetable after 3 seconds, but tomorrow you will get this answer after maybe 5 minutes. It's just imagine numbers, but that's a real. But let's imagine that it's real. So, and that's why the promises need to be more independent from other part of codes. You should remember this. So, when you've got this answer from the server, you work with this data, and this data should works independent, or this block code should works independent with this data. And after this block code, there is no any functions or logic which you need to work with this data. So if you need to work with this data, you should work with this result here. You might call some functions after you've got the data and so on, but you cannot wait the result here and work with this result just immediately after the promises, because delay might be different. I'm not sure. Is it clear or not? Try to do the what I can.
I understand this is so hard to understand. So I expect you have some the most or example so so I can understand clearly. Yeah, but maybe next week you prepare some examples and show me, yeah, and show me some examples. So
okay, let's do next. This topic about this function for all of you will be really difficult. And what you should do, I know that you are tired right now, and it's difficult to try to understand this information right now. So you have a vacancy, you have next week, but I'm not talking about your homework. I'm talking just about the theory. Okay, this theory about this lection. You might ask me next week about this presentation question, whatever you would like, and I will answer you. Okay. If you need more detail, just provide me the questions which is what you don't understand, for example, with examples or something like this, because sometimes it's difficult to understand what you don't understand about asynchronous. How it works, okay, I can try to explain you as much as I can. And also, I promise that I will provide you about this word. I'm talking about the function, okay? More information tomorrow. I will do this, but we have a different time. So in my location, almost 3 p.m. Yeah. So I stop the sharing the recording.